In short, we're able to turn any building scan, so call it a point cloud, into standardized LOD 200 BIM and CAD files. So essentially, as-built drawings. That's really it. And so we're doing that faster, more predictably, and at a scale that really hasn't really existed at the services.
At Sight and Scene, we feature the innovators, disruptors, and changemakers using reality capture technology to drive real impact. These are the people who saw a problem, challenged the status quo, and took action, whether restoring ecosystems, improving resilience, or transforming infrastructure.
They bring a deep sense of responsibility and stewardship to their work, leveraging technologies like drones, laser scanning, GIS, and mapping to create meaningful change. More than just experts, they're storytellers, sharing their journeys and the why behind their work. Our mission is to amplify their voices, educate, and inspire others to push boundaries and take action.
Sight and Scene.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sight and Scene podcast. We're back in the studio. My good friend Scott, how you doing?
Hey, good, very good.
Good to see you as always.
Yeah, we're looking forward to, I know we were talking about this right before, looking forward to commercial UAV coming up. That's next week, so I've been prepping for that. It'll be really fun. I know this episode's going to air after commercial UAV, so I'm just going to say in retrospect, I had a great time, I had a blast, met a lot of people, awesome. But we'll follow that up in another episode and do a nice deep dive on that.
Yeah, you didn't stay up too late in Las Vegas and get yourself into trouble and all that stuff.
I'm gonna assume no now. Hopefully,
what stays in Las Vegas or what happens in Las Vegas, future stays in future Las Vegas, past, present. Yeah, cool. Well, I got my Friday shirt on. It's Friday before Labor Day, so I didn't see you guys brought your Friday shirts, but a little bit of cliche. But I actually had I was working at a big hospital, managing a hospital with Turner Construction many moons ago. And one of the superintendents on the job, like, he just did it. Like, all the superintendents in the job trailer had their Friday shirts. And it just got to be a fun thing because I had a pretty large collection from all my travels to the Caribbean and Mexico. And I was just like, hey, I got a lot of those shirts. I'm going to show them off. So here we are. It's Friday. So
they're all packed for Vegas for me. That's my answer.
Yeah, right. There you go. Awesome. Well, yeah, Scott, you got commercial UAV coming up. We talked a little bit in the last episode. Just we're coming off the busy season, still a very busy season as far as our businesses. So really excited that we shared some of that. I'm actually cooking something up. I can probably share more about it down the road, but I'm cooking something up too with. Adjacent, coming from the construction industry, a little bit construction adjacent, just like to tap into some of that knowledge, but it involves AI. I can say that, okay, but cool. We could talk a little bit about that in the near future. So just a little teaser, but we're going to get into introducing our guest here, Jose Cruz. Jose, welcome. I'm going to do my best here to give you a proper introduction. So, from pizza shop cashier to architect and now a tech founder in the AECO space, Jose Cruz has sat on many sides of the real estate and built environment table. His journey has given him critical insights into our built environment, revealing even the most sophisticated buildings and building owners struggle to answer a seemingly simple question: what exactly is inside their building? After working on projects from high-end New York City condos to a large project at the World Trade Center, he saw firsthand just how difficult it is to obtain accurate drawings for existing buildings. So this was the catalyst for Jose founding Integrated Projects in 2018, or IPX, I think for short. Maybe we could clarify that. Yeah. But basically, Integrated Projects makes it easy for owners and building operators to get accurate data using new technology like 3D laser scanners and AI to make Scan-to-BIM scalable and easy for everyone. So hope I served that justice, Jose, and welcome. Happy to have you on the show.
Mike, that was incredible. I need you in every one of my meetings to introduce me.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that was really good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you know what? I think we teed it up a little bit. You would just want to share. I know that you've had a really interesting journey to where you are now. You want to give us the, like a distilled version or a deep version, whatever feels right, just to kind of what led to the inception of integrated projects, and just some of your background that really fostered that?
Yeah, well, for your listeners, well, first, thanks for having me. I think for context, like Mike mentioned, started actually before architecture and before construction, and certainly before building any kind of technology. I actually grew up with my parents at a pizza shop, like you mentioned. And I say this because now as an adult, I appreciate this, but turns out when you're 12 years old and your mom is talking about the cost of cheese and dough going up, dad, front of the house, mom dealing with payroll. I attribute that experience only now to having a bit of a cheat code, when just having an appreciation for like what it takes to run a business, a profitable business, and also realizing that just restaurants are incredibly hard, and certainly
oh my God,
not my
yes.
thing. So my way out was actually architecture. Studied architecture in Florida, moved up to New York. Worked as an architectural designer. Couldn't pay my bills. As it turns out, junior architects have it fairly rough.
It's the term CAD jockey. Maybe that's
unfortunately, yeah. These days, BIM jockey, but yeah, it's unfortunately still the case. Overworked, and certainly underpaid, and to pay the bills as someone living in New York, I actually had to move to the other side of the table as a construction manager. So for some years, I worked with Tishman Construction down at the World Trade Center, and that's where I stumbled across the obsession that now, a decade later, what's keeping me up at night, which is it's really difficult to get an accurate set of drawings for an existing building. So it turns out if you combine scanning and modeling, you could begin to solve for that. So in our case, we'd like to think we've gotten really good at it, but that's the elevator version.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I can also, coming from a construction background, 26 years in large commercial and custom residential and high performance, and working with a fully integrated design build team, I know how often it's like your designers are going out to a job site. They're out there with tapes and lasers and really trying to build it in a clunky way. So it sounds like that's come a long, long way.
It has. I mean, you're not alone. I think one of the things we've learned is that it turns out that even the most sophisticated organizations in the world are still using laser pointers, sketch pads. We ask them like something as simple as like, what is the quantity of doors or windows in the space? Folks would be hard pressed to answer that. So you're typically pointing to spreadsheets or maybe iPhone photos, but no one has really solved for like, how do you digitize buildings in such a way where now anyone could easily answer in a 3D or 2D way, like what's inside, and ultimately, is this documentation accurate?
I think you brought up a good point there, because I almost think sometimes the bigger the enterprise, in my experience, the more the existing stuff has been 1970s hand-drawn PDFs. They scanned them in, hopefully, and that's it. That's what they've got. And it almost seems like the bigger projects I've worked on, the more that documentation is like legacy hand-drawn stuff sometimes. So do you find you contend with that a lot?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit all over the place, but what I've learned to appreciate is that a few nuggets is that somehow, fast forward, I'm skipping through a lot, but we've digitized close to 5,600 buildings, literally.
Wow.
From commercial, residential, institutional to industrial. Okay. And in that process, one of the things we learned is that 8 out of 10 buildings, almost every single time, you can almost rest assured that the building owner lacks an accurate set of drawings for the building. So turns out it makes it really difficult if you need to renovate a floor or two or the whole building, or if you need to, take stock of the assets inside, whether equipment, furniture. And so I'd like to think we're working on something that's like first principle. Like if we could solve for accurately documenting a building, its architecture, mechanical systems, furniture systems, we could help, unblock a bunch of different, downstream markets, of course, compliance, renovations, operations, but also a bunch of other stuff too. But
do you find that there's a date or an era, so to speak, of when it's like, well, we know for sure anything before 1990, we're going to have to, we definitely have to collect new data. Or after that, they started to do a better job. Like, do you see that there's these distinct kind of date ranges where the data is either completely absent or it's been improved upon? And yeah, just kind of curious what that looks like from having that many buildings under your belt, because in my experience too, it's, the gamut is huge, where you have non-existent, you have hand-drawn stuff, you have stuff that was done in CAD, you have stuff that was actually documented really well, more modern day buildings. But even then, how well was that even documented? So do you see, like, do you have, if you're talking to a prospective client, you're like, oh, that's a building from 1982, I could almost guarantee XYZ. So like, what do you typically see there?
That's almost the case. I mean, remember, I guess 1982, what is that? Almost 40 plus years, and more than 40 plus years. Like, you can almost guarantee that building has now gone through a series of changes inside that, when looking at those blueprints from 82, they're almost, I would argue, they're actually quite harmful to assume that they're accurate.
Right.
In my junior design days, I actually made the mistake one time of, I used to work for Rams, Robert A. M. Stern Architects. They were known for, like, high end condo stuff. And the irony, of course, is that I was working on a extremely expensive condo that I would not be able to step in. But one of the mistakes that I made as a junior designer is that I actually received CAD drawings from the landlord of the existing building, and we were renovating a series of floors. And so, of course, I used the background drawings to design. I spent, I don't know how many nights, months. And of course, as you can imagine, I presented, thought I was ready to go. Turns out someone in the kind of presentation was like, I actually don't think that column's there. In fact, I actually don't think this entire section is there. Oh, actually, this entire thing has changed. And, of course, you're just like, and, this is kind of the start of what's now become, decades long obsession.
That's you're probably like you're thinking of just the hours you spent disintegrating right in front of your eyes.
Literally.
And that's never a tough thing. I mean, same here. I used to do single line. My background was in MEP, and I can't tell you how many drawings I did single line, double line off of scanned hand drawn PDFs. And then you do a site walkthrough, and you're like, wow, that's quite different than everything we put in the preliminary work to do.
Yeah.
And that's just very, very frustrating, that you don't get that time back. And I imagine tough to build client, right? Tough to say, hey, we spent all these hours making this assumption, and that assumption was wrong, and now we gotta, someone's eating that cost.
Yeah. The old saying about when you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
I love that expression.
Exactly.
I tell you, so both out of necessity, again, to pay the bills, then I moved to the other side of the table at Tishman. So this time I was on the receiving end of drawings. So I was on the construction side, and my role was a BIM manager. And hear this, my role was effectively to sit in a dark room with all of the subcontractors with laptops. And we, I kid you not, I think we must have spent 4 or 5 months just coordinating, meaning I would be the one responsible for, essentially there's an adult babysitter trying to tell the plumber like why to move their line because it was running into the HVAC guys. And we literally spent months coordinating this. And when we thought it was all done, it turns out I nor anyone bothered to actually ask if the underlying CADs that we were all working with, if someone had actually verified it. Turns out no one did. And so when we were fabricating structural steel, this was all kind of structure, all kind of under the World Trade Center. That's when we discovered, turns out nobody actually bothered to, scan and model the background drawings. So yeah, a little bit of trauma.
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. I've been in those meetings before, more on the new construction side. I managed a 750,000 square foot hospital for the Corps of Engineers on a military base. And it was the amount of, if you know anything about healthcare work, like the amount of overhead work, above all the ceilings, because they have like med gas, they have extensive HVAC just with all the, the filtration. And so anything above the ceilings is so incredibly dense that the clash detection and all that coordination was just extensive. And it took so much time and effort. And I think even then, this was back in 2012. Yeah, 2012. So even then, you still missed things. It's not a perfect science yet, and maybe it will never be a perfect science. There's always something that is really hard to see or visualize. But inevitably, you got people crawling up on top of ductwork above ceilings, trying to seal off a rated partition at the bottom of the deck. So it just creates so many inefficiencies when you don't have good documentation and that coordination resulting from that good documentation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And something too, I want to circle back on what you were saying is that, just this thought that a building is built, again, let's say 1982, it almost undoubtedly has gone through multiple phases of some sort of remodeling, right? Where things were removed, updated. Think about like buildings after COVID and all these updated, HVAC systems as a result of like, well, we need to do better with our HVAC system. So just it's a monumental task to keep up with the ever changing environment with buildings and to have that accurate data to lean into when you're endeavoring upon a project and coordinating something. So awesome. Yeah. So I think this kind of, I want to zoom out just a little bit because maybe I feel like we have a pretty broad audience, I would say, but speaking to architects, obviously a lot of people that are tuning into this know what BIM is, but maybe for some people it's like, what is BIM and how is that different from reality capture?
Yeah, great questions. And also, I appreciate that for whatever reason, our industry just really loves to throw acronyms and a bunch of
no shortage.
BIM and VDC and LOD and LOA. And all that. But I think in the simplest form, I think BIM is an extension of the way we have drawn and drafted, and in this case 3D modeled buildings. I think way back in the day we would essentially take stone tablets and carve them and create floor plans, believe it or not. At some point we evolved into paper and pencil, or specifically drafting boards, and it, kind of came to be blueprints as we understand it on paper. Over time, I think somewhere in the 80s, I believe we then moved into computer-aided drafting, CAD, which now allowed us to draw a line, another one, and another one, and kind of resemble a wall, and then just continue drawing. Which was, again,
we're still in the 2D world here.
Yeah, right? we're still in the 2D world. And I think, so the CAD was effectively just drafting, but in the computer, right? We're still literally drafting lines. BIM, what it does is it's an extension of this, where now instead of Jose as an architect drawing 4 lines to make a wall, what I'm now doing in BIM is actually extruding elements. So I'm extruding walls up. And so I'm not only just drawing in 2D, but I'm actually simultaneously drawing in 3D. So I'm now determining, quite literally, I'm sure everyone's seen a 3D model, but effectively the process by which we create now 3D space. And the reason that matters, there's a lot of reasons, but for one, the jump from CAD to BIM, I would argue, is the same exponential jump than, say, from the typewriter to the computer. I mean, we're talking about apples and oranges. Typewriter, you input some, you type some letters, you get like letters on a piece of paper. You can't really share that information. You can't connect it. You can't really edit it, right? It's just the piece of paper, and you could try to, like, I don't know, can you erase stuff? I don't know. But BIM is like BIM now introduced.
Not on the stone. You can't erase it on that stone.
Right. You're gonna need a new stone tablet there. But BIM, what it does is that it now is a digital file that allows us to, number one, all view it at the same time. We can now share it digitally, of course. We can now take infinite amount of cuts within a building, so that what used to take Jose literally drawing one floor plan in CAD, now I can actually just create a 3D model and then tell it I want a floor plan here, and I want sections here, and here. So it's almost like a kind of a different paradigm by which we can both design but also understand space. One final nugget. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling or Building Information Management, depending on the noun or verb. But the reason it's important is not just because it's a cool looking 3D model, but there is actually like ones and zeros embedded into each element. So when you take a look at a 3D model and you click on, say, a particular wall, that wall, you may not see it, but it has metadata. And that metadata can be something such as what's the surface area of that wall? What's the type of that wall? What's the length, height, width of that wall? And you can essentially just embed it with immense amount of data there.
Yeah, the finish, the paint color, all of it.
All of it.
And I'll add there too, just to kind of maybe even connect like one half of our listeners to this one. I find it so funny because to me, I started doing CAD work and I kind of, unfortunately, like missed out on the BIM movement when I was an MEP engineer. I kind of then went and did this drone stuff. And in survey work and civil work, you hear of like software called GIS, like a geographic information system. Right. And people love that. I think it's caught on a ton. Most survey firms will say, well, I do GIS as well. And that is that, right? You draw a line that represents, say, a storm drain or a storm line. And in it, there's that metadata. And I can't tell you, Jose, how many times, maybe this is just the civil way of thinking, I've had somebody say, okay, I love my GIS program. Do they make that for indoors? Like, I've never seen my GIS program go inside the building. How does that work? And that, my answer has always been, you need to Google BIM and like open up that whole world.
Yeah. Well, which speaks to kind of the next part of it, which is I don't think for some of your listeners, I'm willing to bet that they definitely heard about BIM, but perhaps it's been this kind of elusive promise, like someone out there, some other project is doing it, but like I'm totally okay with like where we're at, and I don't blame them. I mean, I think that till very recently, both the cost at which it's taken to create BIM, and also just it does assume that the folks creating it, have the skills to do it. But I do think that long term, both the speed and cost at which we can create a BIM is going to reach parity with the speed and cost at which it takes to create a CAD. It's been a long time coming, but I do think that companies like ours, I'd like to think we're kind of skating to where the puck is going and trying to make both BIM and CAD kind of achieve the same speed and cost.
Yeah, I think I liked, the point you bring up there just about the promise of what BIM can do. And, I've listened to many, many different podcasts. There's actually Drone Deploy does a really good podcast. I don't know if you've tuned into that one, but they talk a lot about they talk to a lot of superintendents of big general contractors and VDC managers. And, they're sharing the stories about how they converted, the old school superintendent who's just like, I don't want anything to do with that. I'm going to do it my way. But then they start to see over the years, I think it has been an uphill challenge to get to where we are now. And I think there's been a lot of agencies that are pushing everyone like we have to move to this 3D paradigm, because if we don't, then we're just going to keep repeating the same kind of errors and not really gaining those efficiencies in the industry. Yeah. So I just think that it has taken a while to find the promise of that. But I think a lot of that has to do with its implementation too, right? It's like you can have a good model, but then how do you use it throughout the course of construction? And how do you tie in this reality capture piece to complement it? And how do you, so I'm just thinking about the skill to create an accurate model, but then the technology piece that has kept pace with it and the ability to consume that data in ways that makes it easier for maybe a less tech savvy person on a job site. Like I think that all of that's come a long way to make that promise really start to come to fruition. And I think that like this reality capture piece, which obviously we're all very interested in, and it's a major part of our businesses, but I just feel like that it's just such a critical complement to that BIM process. So how do you see continuing into like from BIM to reality capture? What how the difference is and why it's critical?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot there to unpack, but I think from reality capture to Scan-to-BIM to IoT to digital twins, these are all both I think interrelated, but also obviously quite different, but they all kind of need to be true in order to, I think, unlock what we've been hearing for the last 20 years of like this fully digitized smart buildings and cities. A few maybe hot takes. I think that digital twins haven't taken off for a variety of reasons, but one major one is that it's fairly straightforward. Like it just costs a lot and takes some time to create a 3D model. That's the reality. And so sure, you could get a 3D model of say a 270 park or some major construction project, but 99.9% of the projects, it's still a massive consideration and investment. So I think the cost and speed by which we need to produce a 3D model needs to drastically drop. That's whether it's us, whether some other company figures it out, but that needs to be true if we're going to unlock digital buildings at scale. I think reality capture and Scan-to-BIM essentially are kind of two legs of the same stool, and that whether we're talking about LiDAR, photogrammetry, turns out we need like the accurate set of information, in our particular case in the form of a point cloud. And we've essentially built the operation to convert that point cloud into standardized CAD and BIM files. The reason that matters is we've learned, I guess besides maybe us and a few really, really smart folks, turns out like just point clouds are really heavy and very unusable. And sure, maybe someone has a license out there, but most kind of downstream use cases really do depend on some CAD or maybe BIM format that's just a lot more accessible. And so making this leap from scan, right, using a terrestrial scanner, drone, et cetera, to BIM just opens up the gates to now just a much broader set of audiences that could actually use the files.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take at all, Jose, because I just think back to my experience and I think of, okay, doing as-built modeling of let's say a smaller project, right? Because not everyone's digitizing a skyscraper. Yeah. And you think of like what it was is me, Scott, probably getting paid like $25 an hour then, being billed out at maybe 60. And I go in with a laser tape measure and I shoot 4 walls and I draw it on my little pad. And then I go back to the office and spend another few hours drawing it up in CAD. And I could just imagine my old project manager, forward-looking folks as they were, being like, okay, that's that price. That's the price to digitize. You got to be at that price, or you got to be showing me that it is way more stuff I'm getting that's useful. And so that's the tough, I run into it myself. I think that's a tough hill to beat. People are ingrained in something, and let's say the previous technology, while old, was cheap, right? I totally agree. And this is a very cost sensitive industry. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that difference can't be this big gap, because that just scares people away. So my next question maybe is like, okay, so where do you see who pulls the lever to go to BIM, right? Where are you seeing it come from? Is it the architecture firm that's like, oh man, this is just a better way to do it? Or is it the client who's like, no, I heard this was a better way, I want you to do it that way? Yeah. Where do you see that turn coming from?
Yeah. This is a great question. I think there's maybe kind of 3 groups of very important folks. I think first and foremost, and I'm not just saying it here because of the podcast, but laser scan professionals are the ones that I think seem to get this the fastest, because it's a fairly straightforward value proposition where it's like, hey, look, I'm out on the site, I'm already scanning, I produce this kind of point cloud file format. You're telling me you can convert this to CAD and BIM with a predictable level of cost and turnaround time? Like, yes, please. Like, okay. And so it's more of a business value proposition where it's like, I charge for this, and now you're telling me I can also charge for this. Like, sign me up. So that seems to be fairly straightforward. And so obviously laser scanning professionals in general seem to be the biggest advocates. The other 2 buckets are, I believe that everything ultimately boils down to the owner. Just big picture. And if you own the physical asset, I think you should also own the digital version of that asset. Yeah. That's rarely the case though. And so what happens is, depending on the sophistication of the owner, they will likely delegate that to their architect, which will then delegate it out to a surveyor or laser scanning professional or something. So those are usually the suspects. It's the AEC professionals, it's the laser scan professional being brought on, and then ultimately the owner. I will say the underlying thread across all of them is if there is some BIM manager or some VDC person as an advocate, that tends to be the best sign that like, okay, these owners are ready to adapt it. And so we are seeing some of the big brands that own and operate multiple locations just actually kind of bringing us in directly. I do think that makes sense because, well, you know, architects and engineers and contractors care about it, but only so far as it impacts their project. After it's like, you know, the owner is ultimately stuck with the building for as long as they own it. So I do think that accurate digital asset ultimately will most benefit the owner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, we're kind of seeing those three kind of customer segments: owner operators, AEC, and laser scan professionals.
Cool.
Yeah. And I was thinking too, just on the like an individual project is sometimes too, like there's a size where it might make sense. Like, okay, it makes sense for this to be a BIM project, but then it also depends on your project team and all the partners that are involved. Do they have the skill level to actually incorporate into that BIM model? Does the HVAC folks have a good solid BIM team that could work into the comprehensive model? So I think all of that is key in making that work.
Yeah, that's key. I do think that the industry is still in that kind of transition where we are still holding on to CAD.
Yeah.
And
the hardware cost of these laser scanners, right? Coming from my side, as I consider myself in the laser scanning professional side, and we do laser scanners and drones, the drop in the cost of those and the ease to operate those, I think, has been a big one. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's almost like laser tape measure, right? Like CAD drawings got easier. I don't know a single architect that doesn't use laser tape measure when they shoot up a building, right? Like in versus a ruler. To me, it's the same thing as the laser scanner. It's getting so much more affordable, so much easier. There's been like 3 or 4 new SLAM scanners hit the market in like the last 2 years at this point. So there are some really cool advancements there that I think also is pushing it.
What I'm curious, just to name a few, like what are some of the ones that stand out?
We're seeing, I've not tested it, and so who knows, but I know like X-Grids is this company that's hit the market. We've seen them at a lot of expos, you know, and there's
because they're tying in the Gaussian splat, like they're bringing that Gaussian splat in with it.
And they're definitely for smaller spaces, I would say. You know, there's the other ones, you know, you've got your Naviz, which to me is like the main one that we see all the time. But now there's like this new tranche of like, okay, kind of like you said, almost to justify the cost of smaller scanning areas, I think, right? Because you've got these ones that are great for like whole facility, but now you've got these entrants coming out that are like, well, maybe you just want to renovate one room, and here's a SLAM scanner that can do that. And then look at the iPhone, right? You have like Polycam. To me, I was joking that if I was a kitchen renovator, like I was just working in kitchens, I'd just buy Polycam. Like, why ever use a ruler again? And Polycam to me is almost like, it's like mini BIM. It's not the level that a property owner needs.
BIM light.
BIM light. There you go. It's BIM light, but I'm doing a mini version
Extra
of that.
light.
I'm scanning, scanning a kitchen and seeing if cabinets fit, something like that. So it's almost like we're starting to see BIM light, which is cool because you need an entry point, right? You know, BIM light can go to BIM standard.
Yeah,
I actually demoed a GeoQ, the Go version. It was I can't remember the exact model, but I also did the same space with Polycam. So I was in there and I'm like, I'm here. I'm going to use the GeoQ. I'm going to use the Polycam, and I created 2 point clouds and 2 OBJ files from both. And obviously the scanner was way better, but Polycam was mostly usable for what that use case was on that particular project. So I think it's all about the right tool for the right project, and I think we see this all the time in the industry. If we're trying to pitch drone services to a contractor who's like, well, I own this $100,000 Leica RTC, so I'm just going to use that for everything because I paid $100,000 for it. Where the drone is actually much more nimble. You're going to get your data faster. It's the right tool for the right circumstance. So we run into that every once in a while where it's like, yes, it's an amazing tool and it gives you extremely accurate data, but is there another tool that's appropriate for that use case?
we run to all the time. Like, so it's an amazing tool, and I don't want to lug that thing upstairs to the roof. So we're going to use a drone, and it's going to take 5 minutes.
Well, that's the safety implication, right? You
Yep.
don't have to maybe put a person on the roof or, yeah.
So it's a lot, right? It's expanding a ton, which I think is, that seems to bode well for you, Jose, right? Because you've got all these different ways now to capture. And so I assume that, correct me if I'm wrong, IPX doesn't seem geared toward any, you don't need to have like this specific scanner. I'm sure you have minimum requirements, but I'm assuming your goal is like, go forth and get what you want and bring it into IPX.
Yeah, we'd like to think that we're benefiting from the kind of tailwinds of just more LiDAR on the market. I think the dream is, what is the dream? The dream is the mobility of an X-Grids, the accuracy of an RTC, the beauty of the Gaussian splat, where they could fly around, the cost of an iPhone LiDAR, whoever makes that, I'm incredibly excited about. But yes, we are, because by default we ingest any point cloud, specifically E57s, XYZs. We just benefit from the broader LiDAR community getting more accessible. Now, granted, we also do see some just bad point clouds out there.
Yeah.
So while it's getting accessible, not all of them are created equal. So I think finding the right balance of speed, accuracy, and cost, I think, you guys teach me if you guys see any players. But I was, for example, I was on a call with the X-Grids folks today. Actually, I just meeting with the team. But yeah, turns out we want all of them to thrive, because if more people are scanning, then that means more point clouds out there for us to convert to CAD and BIM.
Yeah. What's interesting to me as a small business owner looking at some of these tools, like given the circumstance, like I will rent certain equipment because it's just it's those projects are further and fewer between, but it's also it's an exciting and scary time all at the same moment, because it's like, okay, a Navis. I had a demo of a Navis, and that's an incredible piece of it. Like the point cloud was amazing. So you have to give props to what they've done with that technology, but it's like, okay, is there going to be some other product 1 year from now that comes out of somewhere in Asia that's like, it matches the quality and it's a fraction of the price. So that it's just, and it's as scary as a small business owner to be like, oh, I'm going to invest $100,000 in a piece of equipment. And then, so I don't know, just as a business owner and someone who's in the space, I know a lot of these tools are like fundamental in your workflow as far as the people you rely on. And then maybe we get into a little bit too, like some of this work in house for you guys, but what do you like as a business owner, how do you weigh those kind of decisions when it comes to, this is true for all technology. The more it grows, the more competition, the prices drop. It's not like it's a new phenomenon or anything like that. But.
Right. But you're highlighting a pain point that I don't have a good answer for it. We have invested in a few of the toys. We do have a few VLXs at this point. But actually, when I started the company, the first investment that I made was a Matterport. It was the only thing I was able to afford. It was a Pro 2. Taught my little brother how to 3D scan. I think it was a milestone when I was able to afford a BLK. And then a little bit later, I made 2 investments into 2 VLXs. So turns out, though, that we got the VLX2s, and then sure enough, like you said, then the VLX3s came out. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? So I think with that, though, while we do have some in-house capability, I'd like to think that really our core service is converting point cloud. So yes, we can scan, and we do for some enterprise folks, but really our focus is just like, how do we empower the rest of the kind of scanning community? You're highlighting a pain point. I don't even know what the right answer is. Like, you're right. If I'm considering a $50,000 investment, like the first question I'm asking the X-Grids team, for example, this morning was like, how soon is your next one coming? Just I know.
Right.
Exactly.
And they're usually not very willing to share that. It's kind of hard for them.
And it's a tricky answer. And that's where I think like anything there's probably some specialization that'll happen too. I'm not sure, but like, yeah. I mean, we saw it in drones, right? I think drones are actually a good way to look towards this, because it used to be everyone had a Phantom 4, which I want to say is the Matterport equivalent, kind of. It was affordable. It got
still
the
have
job
mine.
done. Yeah, exactly. It's everyone's got them like it's old reliable. And it wasn't, at the time, there were very expensive laser scanners. But now it's like, it's fragmented quite a bit, right? We have a small drone we use for photogrammetry for this side, but then there are these projects where it's like, no, we need to bring out the big guns, and we have the larger drone with the laser scanner and all of that, up to these drones, like, you know, the ones we've used, like the Ilios, which is just, it does one thing exceptionally well. It is just like a precision machine for confined space areas, but you can't fly that thing around a building outside and expect anything. Like, it's just not that general purpose. So, you know, that's an interesting one. I won't say
more of a specialization. Like you're saying, you think maybe laser scanners are going more towards like specialization and ones that maybe interiors versus mechanical or above ceiling or what have you.
I could see that, and I think it all says what you were saying, Jose. There's never going to be the one. There's never going to be the one machine that does it all. Maybe there will. I'm optimistic, but at least if drones are showing us on that side, it's like the drone world has become more diverse than ever before. Right. I think there's no one drone now that is like the drone.
Well, and like the drone, if it follows that path too, maybe we'll all be forced to use made in America laser scanners.
Which, and then we have
I don't want to knock like made in America, of course, like we all advocate for innovation in our country, but at the same time it's like we're a globalized world, and it needs to opportunities in the marketplace, and capitalism needs to kind of reflect that a little.
And without opening up that can of worms, which is like 3 podcast episodes long, you bring up a really good point though, because you have drones that are made overseas, like let's just say DJI, and again, I'm trying to think of perhaps AX Grids is this equivalent, that is like just a fantastic all-around machine. But then there are times where you want something more, and I will say that the other countries, I'm just going to keep on using Ilios as an example, it comes from Switzerland. They were really good at like saying, this is something our competitors are not going to touch. Like DJI is never going to compete with the Ilios. DJI makes your iPhone, right? Your all around, daily thing. And then Ilios is like, you want to do this one really tough thing? Have at it. And no one really, can do this. And that's interesting. So I just on my small business owner, we kind of do that. We have an array of, let's say, scanners and drones that like cover 80% of our work. And then we deep dive into certain ones when we need it. And I just wonder, maybe that'll continue, or maybe it'll be like some drones will overlap, or some scanners will overlap others. I don't know. I think there's a long way of me saying I have no crystal ball, but it's an interesting thing to think of, because Mike's right. It's not it's a significant cost, whether you're a business owner or an operator or what have you. Yeah.
I do have a thought, which is about accuracy. And I think that I think in construction we obsess over accuracy, but it's kind of this elusive reality. And you'll see in spec sheets and in marketing pages that each device will promise some version of like it's super accurate. But of course they also minimize that it's like in a very perfect environment. I think one of the questions that I have, and not to get too crazy on you guys, but to reverse engineer like a vision, what would it take for us to proactively scan buildings? Just like right now, I go out and scan buildings, and like that's all I'm doing. At a speed, cost, and scale that would effectively begin to allow us to capture buildings en masse. And the cost and speed is negligible enough where we can just proactively, as opposed to, like Scott, you and I waiting for a bid to happen and we do it. But what I'm willing to bet is that there is a certain spectrum of accuracy in which we believe that it's within like the LOA 2030, which is about, I guess half an inch or so, that is accurate enough that we would argue for 80-90% of use cases. Of course, not prefab, not others, but for most use cases, for planning, even general estimation, I'd argue that there is a kind of a sweet spot there. And so my question is, whatever scanner can like be a handheld, scan at the speed at which you can walk, be accurate enough to get that level of precision, whatever that is, that's the one. That's the magic one that I'm excited about.
Yeah. And we haven't mentioned customer support too. Like that, obviously that's a big part of all these tools. Like the tool could be amazing, but the customer support could be really lacking. So I think that makes a big difference in how they like what their processing engines are like, or what their hosting fees are, all these things matter.
That's exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's why I just was saying, I use the hover map a lot. That's another one that I really like. And that's because it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It kind of hits that spot where it's like you put on a car, you walk around. And so I think like, I'm a big fan of that. And this is just my strategy, but that's kind of been the same with the drones. Like we lean more towards general purpose drones that, exactly like you said, Jose, can get like, right, there's an 80-20 rule, right? It's like there's an 80% of the bulk. You want to go for that. And then the 20% is low volume, high cost, let's say.
Right.
Interesting you mentioned proactive because, right, everyone wants Google Street View. Like that's the, to me, that is the, like the vision, because Google Street View just exists and you grab it. And that is like, that was the right? They did it proactively. They just like, let's take a camera on a car and let's just do the whole United States. And it's there. I mean, ever since the first day I was an engineer, I've been using Google Street View to look at projects and plan the exteriors and see if how the roof looks and all of that. So it's a good point, because I do think that is the vision that I want to see out of this stuff.
I feel like that something like that would be subsidized by Autodesk or something, because they have their their Forma, where they're really capturing that front end of projects with Forma. Are you guys familiar with Autodesk Forma? So I think they're bringing in all these attributes, almost like GIS can bring in all these different things. So it's like, let's bring in this consortium of I like that thought experiment of like, how do we reverse engineer this?
It's funny because, not to take this on a total side tangent, but you brought up, I mean, right, we have aerial LiDAR coverage across the entire United States, mostly paid for by governments. It's some of it's federal, some of it's state, some of it's even at the county level. I was just doing a project where I was like, explain to a customer that we can do some analysis without even going to the site because we have aerial LiDAR. And that blew their mind, right? They're like, no way. Like, you don't have like that site. And we do. In 2022, an aircraft flew over and grabbed the whole county, not at that level, certainly not at 1 inch, more like 3 meters, but it's there and it's used every day by GIS. And that's why I think GIS kind of is a good analogy, because GIS folks pull down this LiDAR and do all sorts of stuff with it every day. And not a dollar is traded. It's paid for by the government. It's out there. And so that's the cool thing. I hope we'll see more on a city level, perhaps, of that kind of thing. But interiors are interesting, because that's obviously, you're still going. That's just because the nature of being able to obviously do it with an aircraft. I think it's still a different beast, even at the ground level, to do all of this. But I think it could see a similar path if you have the right incentives.
You got me thinking here, because help me connect these dots here. But I think about a few months ago, I was on a panel in Queens, New York, with a representative from the DOB, and the topic was on them announcing Local Law 97, which essentially requires landlords to report on their carbon usage, right? And so to answer that, to literally report on that, you need a combination of data points. Number one, you need to verify your footprint. Turns out, again, the age-old, if your background drawings are inaccurate, it's likely that you've got some outdated information. But then also utility bill information. Point is, when we were on this panel, you can imagine how popular the DOB person was in a room full of landlords, telling them they have X amount of time to submit their building to report. There's about 1 million buildings in New York alone.
Wow.
Just basic math I'm doing in my head. The DOB tried to soften the news by saying, well, yeah, we're instituting this kind of regulation where, building owners need to report. By the way, it's about 12 months from now. And also, we haven't quite figured out the platform by which you report, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
In the meantime, good luck, guys. So here's like New York saying like, hey, we're about to institute this. There will be fines if you don't submit. There's about 1 million buildings. And I just asked myself, 12, okay, I did the basic math, 1 million buildings, 12 months, divided by 365 days. That's like, I don't like, neither the city nor the industry is ready to actually assess 1 million buildings. And so it comes across from New York as like, hey, we're instituting this new regulation, but like, also we've got no idea how you guys are going to do it, but like, good one. I think
go figure it out. Do you think that was intentional? Like, industry, go figure it out.
Well, I mean, I'd argue that like, yes, I think, well, the more skeptical folks would say that they're just looking for more tax revenue, but to penalize. But I did run the thought experiment. Like, how do you, 1 million buildings divided by 365 days? That's a lot of buildings per day. How do we do that? You would need to hire an engineering firm, start the process. It's quite expensive unless you're like related or one of the big dogs. Your average mom and pop landlord is not able to afford JB&B or some other like big engineering firm. So what do you do? And the question still, I'm on the front lines of digitizing. I still don't know how landlords are going to do this at scale.
Yeah. There's some interesting things here. Like there's puzzle pieces that I think will get sorted out. I hope not. I don't think it'll take another generation, but I think it's almost got to be like how like everyone grew up and knew what video was. When everyone kind of grows up and knows kind of what a point cloud is, it's like then you can start because you're all on the same page.
Right.
But New York City EDC, Economic Development Corporation, we've done projects for them, and the point cloud was the deliverable. I was like blown away. I'm like, you want the point cloud? And they're like, yes. We put them into, in that case, ArcGIS, I think. And I don't think they're doing anything, terribly fancy with it. But okay, some agency out there is saying we are accepting point clouds and we're storing them to some amount. So to me, that was like the needle moved the tiniest bit, but it did move, and that was big. And I did not expect to ever contract with a New York City agency and them say, a point cloud is what we want. So that's a start. So I think, unfortunately, it's just going to have to be a bunch of those agencies and stuff kind of moving and being like, scans are what we like, just in the same way that they store PDFs. The DOB stores permits in some cabinet somewhere, right, of drawings. They're going to have to just have that same infrastructure, I think, for 3D as-built. Very interesting.
I just had a thought. Yeah, I just had a thought too. So here in Portland, we have, there's a I can't remember the exact structure of this, but we're in a heavy seismic zone here, right? There's this huge impending earthquake here in the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of buildings were built without knowledge of this huge seismic event. So if you are remodeling a building and it exceeds I can't remember. It's like the assessed value, like a percentage of the assessed value. Then it triggers an automatic seismic upgrade. Like if you're going to put this much money into some sort of remodel, you have to do that. So akin to that, it could be like if you're remodeling a building and it triggers this percentage, you have to scan it. You have to scan it for the, but it's different because that's more for the public benefit as opposed to like a private building owner. So I think it's different, but I think in concept, it's like,
well, it's interesting.
Is there some mechanism like that?
Yeah. I mean, not to give the DOB more firepower here, but that's the impetus behind Local Law 97, right? They're saying, look, this is carbon output. As the air we all breathe, this is the public's issue. And the energy usage is now just as much a public issue as anything else. So it does have similar roots to that, right? It is like, they are justifying, and I think rightfully so, that there's some public life and safety issue at risk here. So, I don't know. This is a great, man. I want to take this to like a larger group. I mean, if ever I want to be like, hey, listeners, chime on in, shoot us your thoughts. This is such an interesting one because I want to follow this more.
But Scott, I liked your idea though of what might it mean if the government was able to step in to subsidize like an entire community of laser scanning professionals that could proactively start to capture. Like like the math just doesn't math if we are reactively scanning. Like, and again, I'm sure you and I get brought onto like big renovation projects, but I'm talking about the 99% of projects that, or buildings rather, that just need to digitize and document.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was thinking that some like part of that would be education too, right? Like try to develop some sort of standard or certification that these laser scanning professionals can obtain this, so that they're working under the guidance of these larger engineering firms that are the licensed folks. But I don't, or maybe not. Like maybe like we're talking about, that level of accuracy is to a point where it's like, okay, we know what we're trying to get out of this, and we know that it doesn't maybe need to hit this certain threshold for it to be applicable for what the real use case of this is.
There's one more thought I had on this, and this is just me putting my business hat on. There's one more previous framework that is nationwide that we can actually look to. Again, man, the GIS folks are going to love me because, like, he's talking about GIS and all that. There is something called the community rating system that FEMA does, and I was partnered with an engineering firm on a project and I really, really cool project. And how it works is everyone has flooding issues, right? And FEMA does provide, there's national flood insurance you can buy. I don't know if you buy through FEMA directly or they just subsidize, but the government is footing the bill for your flood insurance. One of the things they do is say, look, we have this on Long Island a lot of flooding claims.
The island.
Yep. They go, if you do certain data collection as a town, it's actually on the town level. If the town does a certain amount of data collection on their own dime, everyone in the town, you get a score. You get a community rating score. It's really the more you do. You go out and your survey team grabs finished flood elevations or first floor elevations. You give us that in GIS, you get a bonus. We did one where you pull LiDAR data and you show lower areas and you mark those, and the realtors know you get a bonus. You get all these little credits that go up to your community rating score, and the higher your score, the larger a discount FEMA gives on every single resident of that town. Really cool system. I was actually very impressed. I'd never heard of it before. And what it is, it's actually really cool because what does it do? It makes the residents go to their politicians and say, look, I heard about this community rating program. They get together. They say, I want to do it. And the town does foot the bill. But what it does is people are very, very happy that their tax dollars are going to that because they just got a discount back on flood insurance. It's substantial too. It's like something like up to 40%. It almost reaches 50% at the highest tier. And it's a graduated tier. So it's like the more you do, the better a deal you get. I think that's really interesting. And I think if they did that for carbon tax offsets or something like that, that's a cool way to go. I need to, I'm so far from a politician or a decision maker there, but that's, again, GIS kind of has this history of like things we can look to of how this can be, because that's all proactive too, right? That's a very proactive data collection that the town has to do.
Yeah. So I think I have one more avenue because I think this is really awesome. You kind of kicked this off, Jose. So who we're not talking about is the insurance companies. Yeah. Right. Like maybe there's some avenue where an insurer of a building in Manhattan, they're like, okay, well, you've conducted X amount of remodels and your structure is way different than maybe what we've previously insured it under. We require a laser scan after X amount or something like that. I just, akin to that too, just whenever I'm meeting with architects, I'm always trying to get my services written into the specification, right? Because if you get it written into the spec, then that's a good place to be in, right? It doesn't mean I'm guaranteed to be hired to do that work, but somebody in the industry is providing that service for the betterment of the project. So
that's super exciting. I think we're Scott, I think you and Mike are onto something here.
I have to take this to commercial UAV and get some more folks involved.
But one quick before we move on, Scott, the mechanics of that. So when you mobilize the entire community, are you suggesting that the city on their own dime would mobilize a variety of different scanning professionals to like scan using different devices? Like what is the mechanics of that?
So looking towards the survey model, yeah, they use a combination. They will either hire a local survey firm, and what's kind of nice is they tend to go with mom and pops for this, right? Because there's not a ton of money in this. It's also why I agree with you that like the cost needs to come down. They will either hire a mom and pop surveyor or engineering firm generally to go out and shoot all of those elevations, for example, or perfect example, GPS surveying equipment is so cheap that most counties or towns have a surveyor on staff with one. So in this case, I suppose the equivalent would be like the town staff goes out with a scanner in some towns, and then other ones they hire, a relatively small local firm who can get around the place to scan it. And then that is done under a project there. So it's interesting because it's and one of the reasons, but that's one of the many ways they can qualify. Another one is like they go to real estate agents, and the real estate agents fill out some Excel forms because of all their listings. They like put in details of the house because they're the ones closest. So I think the idea is that it's a large amount of people, and it's all tapping to the people who are closest to the touch point of that spot. The surveyors do the first floor elevations because they can access the outside of the building. The realtor gives some more information because they're listing the building. So it's interesting. The equivalent would be putting a laser scanner in the hands of several different people and then putting it into a repository, I suppose. But the idea is it's not just one single firm doing everything. It's a bunch of people bringing a piece of the puzzle together. Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Yeah. All right, I'm going to zoom us back out. I think that was a fascinating rabbit hole we just went down. I think to your point, Jose, just the sheer scale of what needs to be done to benefit the built world, I think is very real. And I think there's probably some mechanism that somebody's thinking about or some structure that is going to enable that in a large scalable way that makes sense. So I think you're right. Like there's definitely something there that could really light the fire, so to speak, under this, because I feel like the demand is definitely there. So kind of rolling that back into what integrated projects does, because I know that you've definitely peppered along the way like all the things that you do, but maybe just really explicitly sharing a little bit about like your secret sauce of what is it that you're doing that hasn't been done before or is being done in a way that is bringing this kind of scale factor to Scan-to-BIM and like digitizing buildings.
I'll give you the short version, but also I'll kind of connect it to the previous topic here. But in short, we're able to turn any building scan, so call it a point cloud, into standardized LOD 200 BIM and CAD files. So essentially as-built drawings. That's really it. And so we're doing that faster, more predictably, and at a scale that really hasn't really existed at the services level. Fast forward to today, we've done thousands of buildings. And as a result, what we've been doing is essentially taking all of the intelligence that it's taken our architects to trace these point clouds manually, literally over and over and over again. And we're actually taking the intelligence and building it into an automated engine. So today, Scott, was, I think, alluding to it a little earlier, but we can now take a point cloud and run it through our engine and spit out an automated CAD and BIM file. Now, I'd argue very much consider it kind of GPT-1 in that it's working. We qualified to our early testers that, guys, this is good, but not construction grade good yet. What's been exciting, though, is that internally I've been seeing immense advancement in machine learning in that it's moving very, very quickly. So Scott had the opportunity to test it. I'd argue that that's probably going to be the worst that you ever see it. Right now, our team is really fine-tuning the ability so that Mike can 3D scan something, upload it to our engine, and in under 60 minutes, he's getting a accurate CAD and BIM file.
Amazing.
So cool.
We're starting with architecture first. We have enough data where we can start moving on to furniture and, of course, the holy grail of MEP. But we believe that by kind of focusing on architecture first, well, just unlocks not just our business, but really like the entire industry to get, again, kind of what we've been alluding to this whole time of cost and speed of as-built just dramatically getting more accessible. So
that's awesome. I'll add too. Yeah, I tried it, and I can say the thing that struck me the most, and I got to give you a lot of credit for this, Jose. It's early stages. I agree. Construction grade is the goal, but I think I uploaded a point cloud. Hour went by. It was almost 60 minutes exactly, and I got back a DXF, and it's drawn the way I would draw it. Right, that is the part that blew my mind. It had like blocks. It had the walls were drawn incorrectly. I think it might have had wall thickness even in their assumed area, and like it was drawn the way that even though it wasn't the final thing, I'm like, I can edit this and then work with it, and that is like. All the automated stuff I had used prior was like, no, we're going to like give you a very mishmash of lines that like it takes less time to just do it yourself from scratch than to take what's automated and fix it up. But this is like fix-upable. Yeah. And that to me is like a huge leap forward. And I know you have a lot of architects on your team, and I got to give you credit because I think it's clear it's designed for someone, whereas, not just, oh, here's this cool generic line tracing routine, right? So very, very cool. And I agree. I felt like I was like, hopped in maybe it's a Model T, but it's still a car, right? And it's the first time I ever hopped in a car, which is really cool.
It's really difficult. I mean, it's not lost, and I remind the team, like, what we're suggesting is we are taking a 1,000-year-old practice that has historically been reserved for engineers and architects, and we're suggesting taking all of that intelligence and automating, right? So it's not lost on us that like it's really difficult. It's funny. We're in the throes of a Series A raise here, and so in the last 2 weeks, I kid you guys not, I think I've had at least 40 intros to different funds, and some of which, the most common question is, "So is this automated yet?" And I'm like, "All right, well, I think." And granted, another thing is so I founded the business in 2018. Now I would consider us to still be in day one, but it's still 7.5 years, and so people were like, "Well, what's taking you so long?" I'm like, well, I think to automate something as incredibly nuanced and complex as buildings, there had to be several chapters that needed to exist. Yeah. And I think number one is that even before you automate anything, which I think is a silly thing to just run to, is there needs to be a few chapters, which number one is you need to build a large enough data set. And you need to build a large enough data set that is standardized. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about having 5,000 models. It's about having 5,000 models that have a one-to-one paired data set of point clouds, models, and segmented models. And you need the kind of trifecta of three so that effectively machine learning could run supervised training. Essentially what that means is just the same way face recognition technology needed someone out there in Florida, New York, India, wherever, to manually identify what eyes, nose, ears, what some human had to do that. We're literally doing that with buildings, just essentially teaching it, hey, this is a wall, this is a conduit, this is a pipe, and we can't skip that step. Yeah. And so that's the unsexy part that a lot of people don't talk about, but that just needed to exist and exist at scale and at a standard that would unlock, of course, now what everybody's excited about, which is automation. And even then, we're only essentially beginning with a segment, which is just architecture. Of course, we'll make that commercially viable. And the next natural question is like, yeah, but I'm only going to use it if you unlock MEP. And so that's the running joke on the team. It's like you automate architecture. Like, yeah, but where are my conduits? And so we'll get there.
So where do you stand with AI and machine learning? And do you think that just big picture, as society is dealing with AI right now, do you feel like it's always going to be a trust but verify type relationship with AI?
100%. And specifically in engineering and architecture, I think any respected architect, engineer, we get a little anxious if we're told that this thing was automated because we want to know well, how was it created? What's the level of accuracy? Like what's missing? And so our approach has been slightly different in the path to automate. You'll notice in kind of our beta that when you drop a point cloud, we actually kind of visualize the whole baking process. So we actually show you your point cloud. We show you your segmented model. We show you the first automated 3D model, which we call the first draft. And then we show you the plan. And then we actually just unlocked a feature this week that allows you to then visualize your original point cloud relative to the CAD drawing we created. The point here is effectively not to suggest, hey, we've reached perfection, which I think is a silly goal, but rather to show you, hey, here's the scan. Here's what we created a model. We're not suggesting we're right. We do have a few metrics to show you, like we're 95, 96%, right? But if we did get something wrong here, we want to show you so you can correct it. So the goal is really more as a secret weapon for architects and engineers, as opposed to pretend like you're just getting this magic thing and it's some black box and there's no detail behind it. I think part of building that trust is effectively showing the process.
Yeah.
Again, similar to what you see with ChatGPT, where you kind of can see the train of thought.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredibly important part. Otherwise, people wouldn't trust it.
Right. Yeah. So the outputs can only be as good as the data you're feeding it, right? So is there, what is the, like, what if someone didn't do a great job of scanning and the scan has drift in it and hallways are, you know, they're what's the geometric shape? It's not, let's go like a parallelogram, right? You know, it's
Right.
Yeah. You have a bend
like
or a
how,
twist to it.
like, what does that look like just from a liability piece of like, how do you disconnect that where obviously they produced the data and you're just replicating what they've produced?
Yeah.
I think that seems like it was an interesting topic of, like, to tackle as a business.
Right. Well, that's the $1 million question. I think the irony, of course, is that when speaking about accuracy, it assumes that there's like one thing that matters. And you guys know well that in our particular case, we can only be as accurate as the point cloud. And so if the point cloud is inaccurate, we can assure that there's a level of accuracy in terms of discrepancy between the model and the points. But that does not necessarily assume that the points themselves are accurate. Right. So that's why we're doing a lot of kind of educational work to promote scan best practices. We do acknowledge that not all devices are created equally. There's discrepancies in point density. Of course, as you've noted, there's drift. And so in our case, unfortunately, well, for better or for worse, we are at the mercy of downstream receiving really solid point clouds here.
Yeah.
So yes, when there's drift, for example, like our engine actually will run into errors. And yet we've seen a few kind of customers just achieve incredible results. I mean, like that surprised me. And so we're actually speaking to them like, what are you scanning with? What are your settings? Like what, your colorization, like tell us everything. Cause whatever those settings are, like working incredibly. Whereas others, it breaks our engine and isn't producing anything at all.
And I wonder if this is part of your roadmap, where there could be a level of QA/QC that's done by your whole machine learning model, where someone should prepare their point cloud accurately. Like they should do their own QA/QC before they send it off to get Scan-to-BIM, right? So let's just say someone doesn't want to do that, and they may be like, "Hey, can we send it to you guys? And can you flag certain things that are maybe not straight or not plumb, or like, do you find that is something people are interested in, and that you have an appetite for something like that? Or is that like, no, we want all of that to happen before we get it, because we only want to be on the hook for this?
I think for better, for worse, I think we're finding ourselves that we're in that position where we do see such a diversity of point clouds that we are starting to get quite good to kind of understand at least what is going to go through the engine and not. And ultimately it boils down to colorization, density. In our case, we can only accept files up to 10 gigs. We are working to expand that to 20, 30, 40. But there's a few just basic limitations today. But to your point, I do think that we're actively putting out our own internal documents for QA/QC just out in the public to just highlight like, hey, here are some of the basic expectations. I think that we see as LiDAR gets more accessible and more consumerized, some of the kind of lower grade devices, so like the Matterports and whatnot, we kind of see a broad spectrum of quality.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a two-way street. We do really depend on laser scanning professionals to kind of, best practices, whatnot, because bad scan isn't going to magically turn into a great model.
Right. Yeah. But could that be a thing for you guys where it's like, hey, we're not producing this as a final deliverable. Send us your data and we'll create the BIM model. And then through that process, we can say, well, this wall is not parallel to that one, or this one is like, it's a QA QC run through your platform, as opposed to we want this for deliverables. But, and I'm just trying to think like what the real benefit. Someone might know that their scan is screwed up, but then what? It's like, oh, here, I got to go fix it. Fix the drift this way, or I don't know. This might just be a black hole of whatever. But I could just see people wanting to take a shortcut, right? They're just like, I don't have time for this. Normally my process would allow for this, but today I don't have time for it. I could send it off to IPX and they do the quick they run it through and they get the walls and then they have some data, some training in there that says this is out of it's not straight.
Yeah. I'm really going to sound like a broken record now. It's like what Third.js mentioned, but to me, that's, not to call anyone out. Like to me, that's almost a USIBD or like a standards thing to address. I mean, right. I think that's awesome. It'd be great if IPX was leading the way, but when I'm thinking about this, I'm like, this is a data QC thing. And the beauty of, when we do like mapping and surveying, the beauty is we're not following, AECOM does a lot of mapping and they're awesome, but they didn't write the standard. ASPRS, the Society for Photogrammetry, wrote a standard, and we can give someone a data set and say, I don't care what software you're putting it in, but it's this good because we ran and we did our checkpoints and we did all these things. It's a lot harder to do it in a building, I think, because you're asking a surveyor to go in and shoot control, and that's like way tougher. But the more I think about this, I'm like, you hope eventually there'll be some kind of true, there's BIM standards, but I haven't really seen laser scanning standards in quite the way that we all do our QA, QC. Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting one. I mean, more than anything, when ASPRS published essentially this document a couple of years ago that gave drone mapping people a real incredible guideline on how to prove their data is good or not, I'm like, I want exactly this inside buildings. I want this thing that I can give, and you can test it, I can test it, and software has that routine in, but they didn't write it. The standard body did.
And then you could train machine learning to flag these things, and whether you're feeding it, the point cloud. I just have a feeling that the point cloud is way more dense, like we've talked about, and it might be harder for machine learning to tell you whether things are out of, they're not straight or square or parallel or plumb, as opposed to once you create the line work and you have vector lines for all these things, it might be a lot easier for machine learning to pick those things up and report on those.
I want to come back to you on that one, because I think I'm curious to talk to my team about what could we start to surface up from the point cloud alone. I think one of the questions that I'm not ready to answer is just based off ingesting the point cloud. It's actually quite difficult because it's a lot of automations we actually haven't quite built on just simply assessing what we receive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But Scott, to your point, this is interesting because I think what I've found is we've at this point assume that we've talked to all hardware devices, LiDAR, or they all approach us with the following question. Hey, our customer base produces point clouds. Could you take a few samples and tell us if it qualifies for this BIM engine? What I've learned is a lot of these manufacturers or sometimes even the laser scanning professionals themselves don't actually know. Like they'll go through the scan best practices and they'll register it, and they think they've followed everything. But they're actually not quite sure, and they'll ask us to then take the point cloud and model it. And to be honest, we're actually not quite. We're sure that it's accurate to the point cloud, but it's not until like the contractor out in the site you're like, hey, this model is like off by like 18 inches here. It's not until like that point is there any certainty. So question for you is there anything, and I think you were alluding to this in terms of the QA standards, but is there anything that at the point, like at the registration level, people should be doing?
It's tough. There's certain standards. I've talked to a lot of colleagues, and I think we all just were like, hey, how do you QA your point clouds? And like, there's some standards, but what makes this so much tougher I'm just going to, again, keep going back to drone mapping. We do it by doing what are called checkpoints, right? We do control points and checkpoints. And those are, let's say with photogrammetry, they're checkered targets that we set out. And whether we do them, or ideally we'd love to have a licensed surveyor do it, measure those points with GPS, and you see how good your model fits that.
Yeah.
It's only because of the invention of GPS that this is so darn easy, because we have this incredible, completely separate technology, separate infrastructure that the drone does not communicate with, like the software doesn't look at, that is like the blind taste test for the data. So it's really all thanks to GPS. That only works outdoors. And that's the tough part here. We don't have the GPS equivalent indoors of like, here's a second completely separate source of truth that we know relies on. That source of truth is to go back in the building and measure it again, right? Or like you said, the contractor comes time. So that's the tough part. It's almost like, I mean, I almost would love someone to give me a guide of like how to use, I know it sounds crazy, but how to use my old laser scanner, my old laser tape measure, and give me a set of instructions of things to shoot with that device, and then confirm it against my SLAM scanner. I do
you
think
should, you should be doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like that should be part of the process, is that you actually take measurements in the field while you're scanning, and you compare the point cloud against those.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do, but I'm blown away. That's a lot of time. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm blown away just by how many people don't do that. And they're like, well, if I was doing that, then I wouldn't be laser scanning anyway. I mean, I guess it's like ground control, right? I mean, I know so many drone mapping projects were like, oh, we didn't have the time to set ground control. I'm like, didn't have the time. It's kind of, how do you not have the, you have to have the time, because you're proving your liability with that. And maybe it's the same thing, but I gotta say, running a total station through a building is so much harder than GPSing outdoors. I will say, and I think way less people do it. And that
possible though, right? It's possible.
Definitely possible, yeah. But considerably more expensive than running GPS ground control. At least that's been my experience. And I think that's an interesting one. That's like, it almost, not that it's going to take another technology, but it's almost like you want to like be able to, it's almost like you want to take two SLAM scanners and be like, they're so cheap. I had two, and I ran two separate ones from different manufacturers, and they both agreed. So like, I'll take that. I don't know. That's a second, getting that control in buildings to test has been a huge difficulty on projects of mine. It's just been a large cost that, I be honest, a lot of people choose to forego because they're like, I just don't want to pay that upfront cost. I don't know. I think maybe that's just, I've done smaller projects, but it's an interesting one. I would love to man, we got to get someone from USIBD on, I think is my next answer. Someone like that to talk through, what standards could be out there.
It sounds like maybe there's kind of a third leg here. So it's not BIM, it's not scan. Maybe the real innovation needs to happen at kind of like the controls, like just how do you set up the right controls?
Yeah, and then there's the difference between ground control points in the drone space and the checkpoints, where you're using the control to process the data, and kind of drape and push and pull on things to fit the control. And then there's the checkpoints, which independently verify the data after it's been processed. So like, what is the equivalent of that in the?
Yeah, I mean, you can set control and checkpoints in a building, but it costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time, and that's a struggle, because it's just you got to literally traverse a building with a total station. It's not easy. So that's a really interesting one. Someone's got to. I'm going to think on that one.
Yeah, and I know you have your reports, like all of your registration. Software is going to give you that report, the confidence report of like, okay, how confident of each scan station are you? So it's, you're trusting that to an extent. So it's like, okay, well, what's behind that process? Like, how does the software and how the coders that wrote that, like, how can something be learned from that to apply to kind of this post capture QA/QC?
Yeah.
Not to give you more reasons to lose sleep at night, Jose. Seem to be doing it.
It's the math that keeps me up is that outside of New York, there's about 1.6 billion buildings. That's the estimate. That's what I've. And if in fact let's assume that we stop building buildings for the next 25 years. There's all kinds of reports that suggest that in the next 25 years, we're going to have to like double, triple our footprint, something like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Essentially, the headline is that we need to build more buildings in the next 25 years than like all of humanity combined. Like just the sheer scale and math of that, I don't even know if I fully appreciate. But assume that we didn't have to build that. Even just like what exists today, basic math, especially in light of, some of the regulations in DC, New York, Boston about like carbon reporting. And I asked myself, okay, what literally needs to be true to actually be successful? Just what exists. 1.6 billion buildings divided by 25 years, which is about where like I think like the hard deadline is. I think equates to something like 168,000 buildings every single day from today until 25 days that we need to forget scanning and forget modeling. And forget reporting. We're suggesting that we need to actually upgrade buildings.
Yeah.
And so the sheer supply chain that needs to exist to scan, model, report, so we'll submit it, get this information in the hands of contractors, like ultimately to improve these buildings. We're talking about heating systems, windows, I mean, you name it, everything. The downstream suppliers that need to actually create it, get into the hands of contractors. Like, I really don't think that industry as we know it, like, can actually come close. I think the last number I read was something like in the US in 2024, the top 50 construction companies completed something like on average, I think of like 10 buildings a day. Like we're like,
even that's orders of magnitude of a gap. Not even like we can close that. Yeah. And I mean, add that to, I don't think an exponentially higher amount of people are entering the industry either. I mean, I just read all these reports of like it's staying flat or even decreasing, and it's certainly not exponentially booming, right? The amount of new entrants there. I mean,
funny you say that. I saw a post this morning on LinkedIn. They were talking about AI, like, disrupting the workforce through productivity gains and these things. And then there was the first comment was like, AI is not going to replace plumbers.
Right.
So from a standpoint of like, okay, if this disruption is going to be as impactful as they say it could be, it's like the trades, like people in the trades it's a huge opportunity for people to be reinvigorating those crafts, because as a 26-year construction professional, I saw it firsthand from the late 90s into the 20s, where it's like the sheer number of people. There was like this missed generation, this gap of tradespeople that just left. I think there was a lot of reasons why some people left the trades, or in the promise of an easier work life through technology and this and that, but it's really difficult. Like there is a severe shortage of tradespeople out there, and I think that is one of the areas that's going to be resilient against some of that disruption. So I think I think just by the nature of what's happening, I think there is going to be a big pendulum swing back into the people getting back into the trade. So
I would agree with that. I think it was a British, a London-based construction firm. I even saw it. They put a giant billboard outside one of their construction projects, and it said, "Hey, ChatGPT, finish this building." I thought that was such a great, first of all, brilliant marketing. Secondly, that really, really, I think it puts the nail on the head. It'll help. Of course, we have all this, but I absolutely agree. I think you'll start to maybe that will be the saving grace. We do see a labor force migration when other ones are AI to out, but that is still crazy, Jose. I don't know how you solve. I don't know how you solve that gap.
Well, I guess for better or for worse, I mean, what it does is it definitely presents an opportunity for all of us, right, to kind of help solve for this. But yes, everything is interconnected in terms of like how do you scale controls? How do you scale scanning? How do you scale BIM? And I think, I was coming from an architecture firm that was like, it built its entire business and like designing these like super architectural digest penthouses for like, very well off folks. Right. So we were designing, like towers that would take 2-3 years. We're talking about a scale that like we need to do 168,000 buildings a day. Like this is a totally different just business model, or everything. One quick note on the labor shortage. I'm talking to a lot of founders and now, of course, investors, and you're I think in the labor shortage. Yeah, I think I forget what the exact stats are, but for like every person like leaving the industry, like like no Gen Z or millennial folks are actually getting into the trades is a massive problem. I am seeing a lot of money being poured into humanoid robots. Now, I have no idea. I'm not in the business of being a prophet, but I have to imagine that the billions of dollars being thrown into this is somewhat trying to kind of address this massive labor shortage. I don't expect robots to be ready in 3, 4, 5 years, in which case, like, trades, like we need more than ever people to be going into trades. But I do see not ChatGPT building buildings, but if you imagine like, okay, well, what needs to be true? Well, number one, robots can only kind of exist within some sort of mapping system. So what do you need? Well, you need an accurate digital map of a building. Okay, well, it's kind of what we're doing. 2, okay, you need robots that kind of know where they're going, right? So, okay, they got the map. 3, that you, of course, you have to get nuanced with how to do tasks. But that's in a very controlled environment. As Mike knows, like building a building is not a very controlled environment. And so
orchestrated chaos.
Yeah, exactly. So while I think robots are going to make a dent, I don't think that they're going to necessarily, at least not in the next, decade or so. I
was thinking along the same lines. It's like, okay, well, if you do start to have more robotic solutions to help supplement the workforces, they need controlled environments and inputs in order to operate in that space. And laser scanning, hey, there you go. Maybe it's like an onboard laser scanner where they're just in real time kind of scanning. Well, I'm sure that would definitely be part of it. That's already happening now. There's an office. I'm a drone pilot for an engineering firm here in Portland. I'm kind of their part-time pilot. And when I go to the office building downtown, there's this little robot. It's kind of like this robot from, do you remember Rocky 3? Was it Rocky 3? And he had these robots like, it's like, it's out on the sidewalk and has a LiDAR puck on top, and it's just has cameras, and it's just kind of keeping an eye on things. And you walk up to it and it'll stop right in front of you because of I don't know. It's just kind of funny little anecdote there.
I'm struggling to imagine any GC I know though with like robot help. I'm like, those robots are going to be in pieces on the floor the day one.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, it sounds
very
like
interesting.
Very interesting. And I think that the challenges ahead, or opportunities, I think they're both, right? Challenge is always an opportunity.
Right.
It sounds like integrated projects is kind of at the tip of the spear. You guys are really doing something groundbreaking with automating some of these processes to gather that real-time reality capture data and digitizing buildings. So it sounds to me like everything we talked about and the scale of it, you guys are doing some amazing things in that department. So it was really awesome to hear all about it. And I don't know if there's anything else that you feel like you want to share with our listeners before we start to wind down the conversation.
No, Mike, Scott, you guys have been incredible. You guys are building an incredibly exceptional community. So I appreciate everyone who made it through the conversation. I think for anyone listening, selfishly, definitely try our services. It's actually, we're still making it free. So if you just Google BIM It Plan, our company, you can type in IPX. But yeah, give it a shot. You can actually upload a point cloud. I believe our current limit is 10 gigs. We'll continue to up that, but test it out. Tell us what breaks. Trust it's very much in the early GPT-1 days, but it's only going to get better. Our hope is that you could, you could get accurate CAD and BIM quickly to support your business and, your customers. So
awesome. Incredible.
Really appreciate it.
Incredible. Yeah. And we do like to end each episode with a little dose of inspiration. So we always like to ask, is there some experience that you've had, or a book you read, or a movie, or whatever that was really inspiring to you that you want to leave our guests with?
Oh, you can't do that. Come on. That's a loaded question. Inspiration. I can think of a million. I mean, I think I can get sentimental and talk about my parents and them being examples. I can talk about I had some pretty memorable professors in college who were both assholes but also like incredibly memorable people. Maybe I'll choose him. He was a architectural professor, had an undergraduate. He would tell me after spending countless sleepless nights doing architectural projects, we would present it. This is super random now that I think about it, but anyway, so he
great.
It would come presentation time, and he came up to me. He would tell really the class. He would said, "Look, I don't really care what you guys were inspired by, whether it was a book, watching Titanic, reading a poem, like listening to a song. We don't care. Like, I want to know like what, like ultimately, I'm going to judge you by like what you present like on this, and we're going to talk about lines, dots, planes, and whatnot." And I don't know, it just gave me an appreciation for just kind of at the end of the day, judging like the work immediately in front of you. And I think that's inspired by a level of practicality. And I think what we do. Super random. I don't know why.
No, that's a great one.
Great.
That's awesome.
He was also a bit of an asshole too. So he made a lot of folks cry in the class. But also, I just read a class. It turns out to be a classic essay called "What is Strategy?" It's a well-known, I guess, turns out well-known business school essay. I found it actually quite enlightening. In that, like, you know, as you build your business, understanding strategy is most importantly what you choose not to do. And I think for me was, just found it incredibly helpful. So anyway, that's a random.
Awesome.
Haven't read it. Great. What is Strategy? Michael Porter.
Yeah. Awesome resource to share. Great little dose of inspiration. Jose, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate the conversation and everything that you guys are doing, and definitely check out Integrated Projects.
Appreciate you guys.
Okay.
Cheers.
Take care, everyone. We'll catch you next time.